What's up, my good friends? Again, I'm in my classroom. Should I just like move my studio in here? I think I probably should, because this is where I spend most of my time. Anyway, I'm here with y'all today to talk about the all the World War One books and books about Spanish flu that I read last year. So I'm talking about Spanish flu books too, even if they didn't mainly talk about World War One, because especially in the American context, Spanish flu and World War One just went hand in hand together. Most of you probably don't know this, but America joined the war on April 7th, 1917, and it's also the day the movie 1917 takes place, fun fact. And um, the flu, Spanish flu, was first reported at a military base in Kansas. So we'll get started. The first book I read about World War One slash Spanish flu was The Orphan Collector. This book made my list of worst books of 2021. Um, really, I didn't like the characters, they weren't inspiring. It didn't even really describe the flu very well, and it was full of my pet peeves. Starting sentences with gerunds like turning around, she opened the window, or tying her shoes, she went to the door. And another one of my pet peeves in writing is instead of describing the situation, they'll just say, like, panic rose in her belly. So, this is about a woman whose husband dies in the war, her son dies of Spanish flu, and so she starts collecting these orphans, putting them in different homes. But she's really xenophobic about it, so she'll take like little redheaded kids with names like Finn and rename them, I don't know, something American, and send them on a train or something to another family. I don't know. It wasn't great. So, the second book I read about Spanish flu slash World War One is As Bright as Heaven. That book is about a family who runs a funeral home in Philadelphia during the pandemic. And some of the characters are involved in World War One. It's not the main focus. It takes place four different point of views, the mom and three sisters. And half the book focuses on during the Spanish flu and the other half focuses after. And the part about Spanish flu was not great. Like, I seriously thought of DNFing that book, but I have a hard time DNFing books I pay for, and I paid for that. But the second half of the book picked up big time. Um, it was about legacy and how to deal with grief and move on, but the events of the flu just were not compelling. All right, next is Jeremy and Major Whittlesey. Janitors. That was kind of awkward. The janitor just came in, so I stopped filming. All right, Share Me and Major Whittlesey. This is probably the weirdest book I read all year, and weirdest in a good way. Now, this takes place from the point of view of a pigeon in the Smithsonian. She is conscious. Sharami is her name, and she tells her story of working with the Lost Battalion in World War One. And the other point of view is from Major Whittlesey, who was the major in charge of that battalion. Both these characters are homosexual. The pigeon, as well as Major Whittlesey. Was he homosexual in real life? We don't know, but this is just describing the events of the war and how horrific trench warfare was, how they struggled with shell shock when they got home. And this one didn't really mention the flu a lot, but I in, all right, so maybe moving the studio in here isn't a good idea anyway. But yeah, sharing me and Major Whittlesey, initially I gave it 4 stars, but the more I look back on it, its originality, its believability, I mean, this is a friggin' dead pigeon named Jeremy in the Smithsonian, and she's telling us a story, and I believed it. I was like, I felt like this pigeon could be telling a story, so definitely recommend. This is a 5-star book. Moving on. Very, very, very dreadful. Now, the title comes from Journal of the Plague Year, which I read in 2020 about London's Great Plague. I still have my copy of that. It was really boring, but I took a bunch of notes in it about COVID, and it could basically become a historical artifact. It's really hot and humid in my room. Can you tell by the size of my hair? Anyway, very, very, very dreadful is kind of similar to a book called The Great Influenza, where it just tells the story of Spanish flu and the people who lived through it. It wasn't really anything great. I gave it 3 stars. It was focused more towards young adults, which was kind of cool. It was written in 2018, and there was a whole section about future pandemics, and it was freaky about how they basically predicted, like, we knew COVID was coming. It was pretty weird. Um, but yeah, I definitely recommend this, if nothing else, for the pictures. It had a lot of pictures in it that I had never seen before. And that's saying something for me. All right, next is the best book I read all year. And that is At Night, All Blood is Black. I've spoken about this before. I loved it so much. It's about a Senegalese warrior in World War One who sat up with his friend who was like gutted by shrapnel while they were fighting for the French. And his friend was begging him to kill him the whole time, and he couldn't do it. So he goes a little bit insane, but the way it's told, he's a very unreliable narrator, and he doesn't speak French, even though he's fighting for the French. He's put into a hospital. He thinks he's a hero. He thinks, I mean, a just typical unreliable narrator, kind of Dostoevsky-like, as far as the underground man would be considered. If you're not a lit student, you probably don't get that reference. But I highly recommend this book. It's only 27,000 words, which means it's about, I don't know, 120 pages. They call it a novel, even though it's really not novel length, but it is so, so disturbing and upsetting, and you feel for this character, and you almost like start rooting for his crazy psychotic acts, but we understand why he does them. Best book I've read all year, one of the greatest books I've read pretty much ever in my life. It's up there. I mean, this is probably one of the top 10 greatest books I've ever read, and that's saying something. So it won an International Booker Prize, and it's just brilliant. And that's all I have to say, guys, today. Keep reading, keep writing, keep loving words, and I'm gonna get out of here before I get interrupted by a janitor again. See ya next time. Bye.